Two dicks, wow.
Yeah! Here we go! Here we go! Here we go!
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 1IQ Football Talk podcast.
And having to go, yeah, but he did kind of do this.
What I'm hearing is you just want Tom Brady dead. Like that's all I'm hearing at this point. You just want Brady
Well,
dead.
not anymore. He's retired now, so I'm good with that. I don't want him calling games anymore because holy hell, he's hard to listen to.
Enough angry and, depressing from myself. Sterling, thank you for being able to sit there as my therapist for this episode.
Start the game already!
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 1IQ Football Talk podcast. Brendan and Sterling coming at you, and it is the final week of preseason. Both of our teams are officially done preseason action, so it is time to essentially just get into the full swing of the regular season. Again, we do have cut down dates coming this particular week. That's going to happen, I think, on Tuesday. It's officially. But first off, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good, man. I mean, we're through preseason now. I'm just ready for football. We've got our fantasy draft coming up this weekend as well, and then it's right into it. College ball has started. There's football everywhere now. It's delightful.
Football every single weekend until February.
Right?
Chef's kiss.
Oh,
And-
exactly. It's wonderful. And I mean, this week might end up being a slightly shorter podcast from us anyway, because it's the kickoff weekend for college football, and we both kind of want to go and watch some more football games. So
Yeah.
I don't know how long we'll actually record today. We'll see.
Yeah, and it's not like we have a ton of things to discuss ultimately this week. Again, I know we kind of potentially had that thought of maybe us going through our 53-man rosters, but that's one of those things where even if we do get like 44 out of them correct, it's just one of those things, like even then, like to try to name a bunch of backups and be like, oh, why I think so and so should be the 6th wide receiver on the Bears roster, it's one of those things where we're just kind of looking at it going like, it's not the most ideal situation out there. Yeah, so switching things up a little bit more, normally we jump into this or that a little bit later in these podcasts, but I think it's actually a decent idea to start off with it to start this podcast, because you and I were having a discussion about one of the questions beforehand that I think actually leads into a little bit of a decent conversation. And so I think that's where we're going to start, obviously, first. And so my first question for you this particular week happens to involve your Pittsburgh Steelers. Would you rather have another 11-win season with a wildcard exit that ultimately results in no coaching change whatsoever, or a 7 wins or less season with a full coaching change for the Steelers?
Yeah, this is a tough one because, I mean, if it's a what I want, I mean, even what I want, like, I don't like watching my team lose. So this is a difficult one. If I'm going by what I think will happen, I think it will be an 11-win season with a wild card exit. As far as what I want, I kind of want both. Like, I want that 11-win season because, then you're in the playoffs and maybe you don't get that wild card exit. They probably will. The 7 wins or less and the full coaching change, it would be nice to finally start a proper reboot with this team, get full coaching staff change. You got some decent pieces in place that you can rebuild around in guys like Nick Herbig and DK Metcalf.
Caleb Johnson, don't forget him as well.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that's a tough one. I think it'll be the former, but I would almost prefer the latter, where we see them not perform well this season, force Aaron Rodgers into retirement, have Mike Tomlin step away, go out and get a new head coach, somebody hopefully offensive minded, because that's what the league is right now. In another 10 years, it may shift back towards that defensive minded, because that's the way this league works. It goes back and forth between the two. And it just right now it's all offense. So that's what we need.
Yeah, and again, I've been saying this for years and years and years. If you've watched the podcast for any period of time, you know I say you can't win in the NFL with a defensive minded coach. And I think this is going to be a lot longer of a turnover than what we've seen in the past, mainly because
Mhm.
the focus on developing young quarterbacks and trying to get that moving. And I know you don't want to see your team lose, but I would ultimately say a 7 wins or less season would probably be the best thing for the Pittsburgh Steelers, because then it forces them down a path. Now, they could ultimately win 7 games this year and not do anything different and not change any coaching staff whatsoever. And then it's
Mhm.
just one of those things where you're just even in this worse position. So it would need to be, that that first losing season for Mike Tomlin that ultimately pushes him out of the door. But yeah, I would sit back and say for the Steelers at the moment,
Mhm.
I was kind of thinking about this a little bit earlier today, which is why I ultimately put this question. If the Steelers keep going down this path of where they have another 11-win year and a wild card exit, at what point are we going to start talking about the Steelers fan base and organization just being the new Cowboys? Where it's every
Mhm.
single year we hear it be, well, this is the year that this is changing because of this, this, and this, and everyone else just nods their head and goes, yep, totally, totally.
Yeah. I mean, I think we got another 15 years to go before we're the next Cowboys.
Yeah.
'Cause the Cowboys need a VCR if they want to watch their last Super Bowl win.
Oh
So
no,
there's that. But yeah, I mean, honestly, with a 7 wins or less season, the draft pick would be so good at that point. With the additional talent that's still on this team, the Steelers could really do a reload through the draft in a similar fashion to what your Bears did. They could ship out their first this year and TJ Watt, especially if Arch Manning doesn't enter the draft, and try to get like 3, 4 first round picks over the next several years and just be like, okay, there we go. We're going to have multiple firsts 2 to 3 years in a row, and we're just going to completely rebuild. And so that would be ideal, but we know what they built this team for this year. They went in and they went and got DK Metcalf. They knew they were going to bring in Aaron Rodgers. They're like, okay, we're going to make one more shot at it,
Yeah,
you
it,
know. And
it's it's Super Bowl or bust.
it is. It really is Super Bowl or bust this year for them. And thankfully, this is the first year where I'm really looking at it, going, okay, I don't think there's going to be a lot available next year for them to double down on this yet again. Because every year it's like, okay, we know there were veteran quarterbacks that were going to be available. There's not quite as much looking like it's going to be on the horizon because I don't see Kirk Cousins being a viable option. You know,
We didn't
and
think Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers was going to be a viable option either.
I mean, I had a feeling with Aaron Rodgers. There was talk even
Yeah,
leading towards the end of the season that was happening. Like when the Jets and Steelers played last year, the talk started of that, and I was like, yeah, that's probably going to happen, despite my incessant saying no, I don't want it to. I had a pretty good feeling.
I
The
think we
Russell
all
Wilson
did.
one, yeah, that was out of the blue because nobody really expected the Broncos and Sean Payton to just outright cut Russell Wilson out of nowhere.
Yeah.
That was a surprise.
Yep. But I think we're
But
both kind of in that similar boat with
yeah,
the Steelers. It's time for a massive, massive change, and it feels
yep,
like the only way that change is going to come is if they have a bad season.
yep, pretty much, yeah. And so my first this or that for you involves two former Pittsburgh Steelers, the two quarterbacks from last year. Which QB is going to have the better season with their new team? Is it Justin Fields with the New York Jets or Russell Wilson with the New York Giants?
This is one when I first read it that I was like, oh, this is an easy decision. Like immediately I was just like, oh, it's going to be Justin Fields. But then I sat back and went, it's not as easy of a decision to sit back and make ultimately because both aren't in really good positions. Because with Russell Wilson, he obviously has Jameis Winston also there. That the second that the Giants feel that Russell Wilson isn't performing up to snuff, they could just easily go to Jameis Winston. But then you also have to look at it and go, Jackson Dart has had himself a really, really good looking preseason, to the point where our buddy Will was texting me a few days ago, and he's saying, so Jackson Dart is the starting quarterback for the Giants? And I went, not yet. But preseason is preseason. You can only take so much from what we see in that. But it is one of those things where it's Dart looked good. And Wilson is only on a 1-year deal, so you would have to imagine, especially with Brian Dable being on the hot seat like he is, he might just say after 3 or 4 weeks, Russ, no, it's not good enough. And so we're going to go to the young hand and basically just try to save his job and go, listen, if we can have 3 or 4 wins with this rookie quarterback for the remaining part of the year, and there's a lot of promise and he keeps growing over the year, I can sit back and say, hey, look at what I was able to do with this kid once we finally got him in there, and he only got better in my system. Now, with the other part, Justin Fields, this is probably the best offense that he has ever played in. He has probably the best O-line he's ever had in front of him. He has Garrett Wilson, who is a really, really good receiver. He has Breece Hall and Braylon Hill as his Braylon Hall, I think it is, as his running backs. He also got a nice looking tight end in Mason Taylor. I don't trust the offensive coordinator, even though he does come from that Ben Johnson offensive tree. And so, like, that's kind of where you sit back and you go, like, I just don't know. One guy could very easily be dropped as the starting quarterback. Well, one guy, we kind of know what he is. So, in that terms, I am going to say it's going to be Justin Fields, because I don't think Aaron Glenn and the Jets are going to pull the trigger or pull Justin Fields off the field at any point for play, while I think the Giants will with Russell Wilson.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's ultimately why Justin Fields chose to go to the Jets, is because he looked at that and was like, okay, if they don't draft anybody that could replace me, then I'm not going to lose my starting job this time. And I think that's what it is. And I mean, yeah, if we're basing it on final stat lines, then I think Justin Fields probably will have the better season, because Russell Wilson likely will not finish the season. If we're basing it on wins that they get for their team, I think Russell Wilson will actually get more wins, because I don't think the Jets are going to win many games this year. Even with how good they are, it just, you know me and my vibes. It's just, I feel like there's going to be struggles, there's going to be mistakes, and they're going to lose a lot of close games, is what it's going to be. It's going to be, can Justin Fields win you games? And you and I have both sort of seen that he can't win you the game. He can preserve the game for you, but he can't win you the game.
Yeah,
And
you
that's
can
what the,
win with Justin Fields, but you can't win because of Justin Fields.
yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it's one of those really, really weird questions to kind of answer, just because it's hard to kind of know. But speaking of the New York Giants, when will Jackson Dart eventually get his first start of the season after what has been a really, really good preseason? Is it going to be throughout the weeks of week 1 to 5, or is it going to be closer to the end of the year, weeks 14 to 18?
This was an easy one for me to answer, and that weeks 14 to 18. It'll be end of the season if he even gets a start this year, because, as you said, there are 2 veterans ahead of him. Russell Wilson is likely the starter week 1. I don't see any change there. And if you go away from Russell Wilson, you go to Jameis Winston. And both of these guys are really good at deep ball passes, airing it out to a talented wide receiver, which the New York Giants have one of the most talented in Malik Neighbors. And so it's going to put that excitement on the field. It's going to have butts in the seats. The Giants are going to be making money. I don't see that from Jackson Dart. And I mean, as good as he looked in the preseason, I always say pump the brakes in preseason, because you're playing against second stringers, third stringers, sometimes guys that aren't even going to make rosters. And there were things in Jackson Dart's game that I saw that I did not like. You know, he has very happy feet. And once you start getting into those games with the first string edge rushers and D tackles, those happy feet are going to result in sacks and fumbles. And I don't think Jackson Dart is quite ready for the NFL yet. So I think it'll be at the end of the season if it happens at all.
Yeah, I do think Jackson Dart will get playing time at some point this year, and I do
Oh, he'll
think
get
it'll.
playing time.
Yeah,
I just don't think he'll start.
like when I say playing time, I think I say like I think he'll start again around that week 14 to 18 time frame. I don't think it's going to be in the middle portion of the year. Like I think a lot of stuff is going to go wrong for him to kind of get that portion. The only reason I bring up that week 1 to 5 is if the Giants just say, "You know what, Russ? You know what, Jameis, we're putting all of our chips in on this kid, and we're going exactly what, like we'll take the struggle year if we have to. Like we really like what we've seen from this kid, and we think he's only going to get better." But even then, I think that kind of leads only really more into your second question that's
Well,
involved
and
with
that's just
this.
it, and that's a big part of why I don't think they'll make that gamble because Brian Dable has too much on the line. He'd be more he'd be more likely to keep his job if he rides with Wilson or Winston. But yeah, it's just I think we'll see Jackson Dart throughout the season. I would not be shocked to see him in weeks 1 to 5, just not as the starter. I think they'll package him in at certain times because he is the youthful mobile quarterback that they've got. So there will be some options there that they can utilize him in. I just don't think he'll start. Um, but yeah, as you said, that leads into my second why I don't think we see Jackson Dart, and that's who is the first coach on the hot seat to be fired? Is it going to be Brian Daboll with the New York Giants, or is it going to be Mike McDaniels with the Miami Dolphins?
Which this is one of those interesting ones because I hear a lot of people talking about this Miami Dolphins team and them just being likely one of the worst teams in the NFL this year, which I don't fully understand that narrative because with so many things that went wrong with the Miami Dolphins last year, with Tua going down, with Tyreek Hill being injured for basically the entire season, with Devon Achane also not being healthy for the entirety of that, their defense having just their ups and downs last year. I sit back and I go, if they had all of that and they were still close to a 500 team, I think they ended up winning more games than they lost last year. Like I remember the end of the year last year, they were in contention week 18 for a playoff spot.
Mm-hmm.
If Tua's healthy and Tyreek's healthy, Devon Achane's healthy, and you also have Jalen Waddle and all this extra talent that's on this offense, there's nothing to say that this team can't be an 11-win team. Now, I don't necessarily think they're going to be an 11-win team. I think they're probably going to be closer to that 8-9-win team just because I don't trust their defense or their secondary at the moment. But if I looked at both of these two teams and went, which one do I see with a bigger fear? It's the Giants at the moment because you brought in Brian Dable to fix Daniel Jones. He couldn't do that. And ever since then, it's just been kind of this weird limbo situation for the Giants of where they just haven't been able to get much out of any of their quarterbacks last year. You're going to see some interesting stuff happen this year. I think it's likely going to be Brian Dable.
Yeah, and the reason I think there's so much narrative around the Dolphins and Mike McDaniels is because of one word you said a lot while you were talking about them, and that was if.
Yes.
If
Yes.
Hill stays healthy, if Tua stays healthy, if Achan stays healthy, and I can go on and on. The defense arguably got worse. Yeah, they got Minka Fitzpatrick back, but they lost Jalen Ramsey and 2 other cornerbacks. So their
Yes.
secondary is Swiss cheese. Their D line is not even top 15 in my opinion at this point. And so that defense plus the worries on offense, and you look, Devon Achan goes down hurt. They had Raheem Mostert there still at that point. They don't have that now. Now it's, I believe, Jalen Wright, who also has been dealing with injury issues through the start of his career. And so that I think is the biggest reason and concern around this Dolphins team. Mike McDaniels inherited a team that was surprisingly good after Brian Flores was let go, and just got better, arguably, because they added talent like Tyreek Hill and other guys like that. And Mike McDaniel, the team has been regressing, and I think we're going to see a further regression this year from it. I don't think we see them hit that 8-win mark. I think they're going to end up at 5 because we've got a team in the Patriots that is more on the rise in their division than they are. I would say they're free falling more. So this is tough because the expectations for the Dolphins are much higher than the expectations for the Giants. And so that's why I feel like if both of these teams start 2-4, Mike McDaniels is in much greater danger of being fired for that than Brian Dable, in my
Yeah.
opinion. So I think Mike McDaniels might be the first one to go, especially if the Dolphins can't win more than 2 games in the first 6 weeks.
Yeah, and that also led us, while we were kind of just doing our pre-show meeting, while we were having this discussion, to go, well, actually, these two guys are kind of the ultimate, what we would call favorites to get fired first. But you and I kind of had this discussion of going, there is one coach that could very easily supplant both of these guys that I don't think anyone is necessarily really even talking about here at the moment, and that's Buffalo Bills head coach Sean McDermott.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, it would be a massive shock to see the Buffalo Bills. Like, let's say they have a really tough schedule here at the early stages of this season. I think even if they do have a struggle and to the early stage of this season, I would be really questioning the Bills organization if they were to move on from him at that point. I think if they are going to move on from Sean McDermott, it's going to be at the end of the year, but they could just be in that desperation mode of going like, man, we're not beating the teams that we're supposed to beat, or at least being competitive against the teams we're supposed to be competitive against, so we'll need to make a move.
Well, and that's just it, because the Bills play the 3 teams that they need to be most competitive against throughout the season. They're not all quite as early as I thought they were. The Ravens are. They play the Ravens week 1. And so if they get blown out by Baltimore on opening weekend, that becomes a big concern. And then it's a little bit easier, they've got the Jets, the Dolphins, the Saints, the Patriots, the Falcons, the Panthers, and then the Chiefs.
Yes.
And that's another big one. Josh Allen has to be able to beat the Chiefs. If they drop that one too, even if they win all those other games, but they've lost to the Ravens, they've lost to the Chiefs, and then they have the Dolphins and the Bucks, but then they face the Bengals in early December. If they drop all 3 of those games, there could be questions around that ownership group going, okay, well, we're going to make the playoffs, but we got to go through 1, 2, or all 3 of these teams to get to the Super Bowl, and Sean McDermott can't seem to do it.
Yeah.
And so then the question becomes, do they roll the dice and go, McDermott's out, we're going to give it to Joe Brady and see if he can beat these teams in the playoffs, because we went 0-3 against them in the regular season. And so that's crazy to think that a team that's been this good could let their coach go, but like we said, it's that hill that they can't get over. It primarily the Chiefs, but if you can't beat the Chiefs, the Bengals, the Ravens, you're not going to the Super Bowl in the AFC.
Yeah. And that is that for this or that edition this particular week. But yeah, this also leads us into kind of one of the things that you and I were talking about pre-show, where we were joking about like, oh, I know you have the fear of Sean McDermott getting fired mid-season, because a guy that you are particularly very interested in, if the Steelers were to look for a new head coach, Joe Brady would just be the easy replacement to just go into that Buffalo Bills organization as the head coach. A guy that I know you have very particularly had a lot of interest in. And I said to you, if Joe Brady doesn't go to the Steelers, Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator for the Ravens, is a pretty damn good option still. And we kind of had this chuckle moment of going like, but the Steelers already have too many goddamn Ravens.
Right? Yeah, it's almost like the Steelers are becoming a farm squad for the Baltimore Ravens lately. There's so many of them that are filtering down out of that team onto the Steelers. Some of them very good players, don't get me wrong, like Patrick Queen, who that was more of a disgruntled move where it's like you brought in somebody else to replace me when I was your number one. And don't get me wrong, Roquan Smith is a phenomenal linebacker, so I don't blame them for doing that.
Yeah,
But
Roquan Smith is 10 times better than Patrick Queen.
I don't know about 10 times better, but he is better. Roquan Smith is a top 3 linebacker, whereas Patrick Queen is top 20. So
There's only one.
maybe
There's only
4
one
times better,
linebacker.
not 10 times better.
There's only one linebacker in football that's better than Roquan Smith, and that guy's name is Fred Warner.
Yeah.
And yeah, but it's one of those things of where we kind of joke about that. And again, if I'm the Steelers, Todd Monken is a damn good coach. Like, he was one of those guys where I said, if the Bears don't get Ben Johnson, I would very much want the Bears to hire Todd Monken.
Yeah. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I wouldn't be upset by it. I would be concerned with it just because where he's coming from. Yes, he's going to have the familiarity with the Ravens, but they're going to have so much more with him. And that is where my concern is does that shift the tide where then now Harbaugh has the distinct advantage over the Pittsburgh Steelers for the remainder of his coaching career while he's there? Whereas right now, it's been sort of a stalemate with, Mike Tomlin sort of a nose ahead of Harbaugh in this rivalry as it goes back and forth.
My question to you with that, and my rebuttal, is, do you think the Bears are worried about Ben Johnson with the Lions? The answer is no.
No, but the rivalry between those teams isn't quite as heated. You know what I mean? Like, if Ben Johnson had come from the Packers, then I would say yes, 100%.
I don't even think that would be the case. I think you're potentially overthinking that a little bit.
Very probable.
Yeah, like, I think if the Steelers were to have gotten Todd Monken, the best way I would say for Steelers fans to ultimately process that is going, you have an offensive-minded coach who is going to call plays, and who's going to be there, hopefully, for the next 10 plus years for your organization, and can develop a quarterback over a long period of time. And the beauty of it is you're taking away that offensive mind from a division rival. I know you and I, when we start to get into our fantasy football chat here in a little bit, are going to talk a lot about the Lions. And you have 2 players on your fantasy team right now, because we're in a keeper league where you have 2 Lions players and I have 1 Lions player, that right now we're both kind of sitting back looking at it going like, man, the Lions lost Ben Johnson and they lost a lot of their offensive coaching staff. This is still a really good offense, but as we all know, a good offense and a good team can be ruined by dumb coaching. And I know both of us were sitting back going like, we are more than happy to trade away some of our offensive talent that we have with those Lions teams because we are scared that they aren't going to perform. I think Steelers fans would love the idea of going, they don't have Todd Monken there calling plays for Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry and all those other guys. What's Lamar Jackson going to look like without Todd Monken? That should be the ideal conversation that Steelers fans should have.
Yeah. I mean, I agree it should be. I just, you know me, I look at it from that different perspective where Lamar Jackson already doesn't give the Pittsburgh Steelers a whole lot of trouble. Derrick Henry, yeah, but Derrick Henry gives every team trouble no matter where he plays football. That is who Derrick Henry is. That's why he's the king.
With the exception of
But
the Philadelphia Eagles.
yeah. But I mean, it's that I just don't see a lot of change in that way. Like, yeah, don't get me wrong. I'd love to have Todd Monken. I need an offensive-minded coach for this team so we can actually consider being a favorite to go to a Super Bowl instead of having to underdog our way to get there. Because really, that's what the Steelers have been for the last 8 years. It's underdogs every year trying to win a playoff game because teams look at it and go, "Oh, we drew Pittsburgh. Okay, who do we play next week?"
Yeah.
Right? And then you know me, we've had this discussion so many times. I'm still a believer that your defense is what's going to win you your Super Bowl. But if you don't have that offense, you're not even going to get there. That's the problem. That's just it. If you've got the defense, you will win the Super Bowl. But if you don't have the offense to get there, it doesn't matter how good your defense is. You can have the number one, but if you can't get there, it doesn't matter how good your defense is.
Yeah, you need a top 10 defense to win a Super Bowl, but
Yeah.
you need an offense to get there. Like if you don't
And
have
and
a
that's
top
just it.
5 offense, you can't do it.
No, exactly. And that's why your defense will win you that championship because they are able to stop the other high-powered offense that you're up against.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
one of those things we just go back to last year where
Right.
it was the Eagles had a really good offense, but they had an even better defense and they
hmm
just manhandled the Chiefs and did everything that they possibly could have wanted to in that game. But yeah, it is
Yeah. But
one of
yeah,
those things.
it's going to be interesting for sure because I think we're going to see a lot of high-profile coaching changes this year. I think we're going to see a big shift in the league this coming off season in coaches because we talked about Brian Daboll and Mike McDaniels. We mentioned Sean McDermott, talking about Joe Brady and Todd Monken. There's going to be a lot of guys. I mean, we forget that Cliff Kingsbury may decide to try to dip his toe back into the head coaching waters. Like, if the 49ers do badly enough this year and we see them grasping at straws leading into the regular season, making trades for more offensive weapons, does Kyle Shanahan end up available as a head coach? Like, there is going to be a big turnover this year, I think, and we're going to see possibly more teams than we have in a while with new coaching staffs in place and a new philosophy going forward, which could potentially start shaking up the league a little bit.
Yeah,
And I
well,
just hope that the Pittsburgh Steelers are among those if we don't win a Super Bowl this year.
yeah, and that's going to be a really really interesting thing to talk about because we had a handful of teams with a bunch of new coaching staffs this year, Bears being one of them. We saw the Jags, we saw the Jets, we saw the Cowboys. I know there was a handful more, but I can't fully remember here at the top of my head. it it's going to be hilarious when the Cowboys end up firing Brian, whatever his name is. He's so unmemorable, and it's the Cowboys, so who really gives a shit? But then they're going to hire Bill Belichick next
Yep.
season because
Oh, I know. We talked about that before. We knew that was gonna. We know that's happening. But I mean, there are some jobs that we know are secure, like Ben Johnson. He
Yep.
is new and really hyped. So really, the Bears could go 0-17, and Ben Johnson's not getting fired. They're not going to. That I'm just saying, like he could have the most extremely worst season ever, and he will not get fired. His is probably the coolest seat in the league behind, say, Andy Reid.
Yeah,
But even that, Andy Reid's getting up there in age.
he
Like
might
we
just
could see
decide
him
to
retire.
retire. Yep.
Exactly. And so it's gonna be wild to see. And I'm sure throughout the season, at some point this year, we're gonna start shit talking and going, man, when are the Eagles gonna fire Nick Sirianni? Because he is a terrible coach, right? Even winning a Super Bowl, I think it'll happen at some point where we're gonna see them drop a game because of him and go, you guys got to get rid of this dude.
Well, it was so funny. The first 3 week or the first 4 weeks of the season last year, you and I were sitting back saying, "Man, the Eagles need to fire Sirianni. The dude is a dipshit." And
hmm
he goes out there and wins a Super Bowl. Talk about a dude who has just been just okay enough at hiring coaching staffs while also having the greatest general manager in any sport to ever
Right.
have and assemble a team. Like we're talking about Nick Sirianni, the guy who's been the coach of the Eagles going into his 5th year, has made 2 Super Bowls and has won one of them, and he is a guy that should be fired. It is ass hat backwards.
Yeah. Yeah. It's infuriating for sure. And so it at some point, I'm sure we'll do that again this year, and it'll come back to bite us again because the Eagles are still the best constructed team because of Howie Roseman, and will likely be in the Super Bowl again this year unless one of the other NFC teams can pull some magic out and get that win. But we know both the real black magic teams in the league are both in the AFC right now, so somebody needs to start practicing witchcraft in the NFC if you want to beat the Eagles.
Yeah. It's going to be really funny when the Steelers hire Cliff Kingsbury as the head coach.
I'm gonna hate it so much. He's not a head coach. And finally, I'm starting to see other guys, other analysts agree with that. I've heard a couple in the last few weeks that are like, there are some guys that just need to stay in their lane as coordinators, and Cliff Kingsbury's one of them. Because he could go down as one of the best OCs.
Yep.
I really think so. He is so good at being an offensive coordinator. But I just don't think he has the right mentality to be a head coach. I've said it ad nauseum for 3-4 years now. You know, I've been like, I wanted Cliff Kingsbury as my OC, not as my head coach. And so I hope that doesn't happen, because if that happens, I'm going to go, okay, well, guess we'll try again in 4 years.
The 2020 Pittsburgh Steelers announced head coaching change. Mike Tomlin fired and Cliff Kingsbury as the new head coach. And all I'm going to get is a message of just a gif of a clown wrapping something around a tree. And yeah.
Right?
Well.
Someone eating crayons.
No, Cliff Kingsbury is not a crayon eater. We all know that's...
Oh, he sticks them up his butt. You're right.
you would 100% take a Cliff Kingsbury offense over the last 3 offensive coordinators you've had.
Oh, over anybody named Luke for sure. Or Arthur.
Or Matt.
Well, I thought that, but then I was like, well, no, if I had a shot at Matt LaFleur, I would take that as my head coach. I know that probably pains you a little bit, but...
No, it doesn't. Like, I am comfortable enough as a fan to say that Matt LaFleur is a good coach. I don't think he's an elite coach. I think he is someone that does a very good job at scheming offense up, but I don't think he's an elite coach. I think Kevin O'Connell is an elite coach. I hope Ben Johnson turns into an elite coach, but...
Right. The ultimate dream would be, as we discussed with this or that, the Steelers win like 5 games this year and have like a top 10 pick, and they go, okay, San Francisco 49ers, we'll trade you TJ Watt for Kyle Shanahan and your next 2 years first round picks. That would be the dream, man.
Yep. Or think about this possibility. The Steelers fire Mike Tomlin, and then they hire offensive coordinator from the Kansas City Chiefs, Matt Nagy.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't wish that pain on you either, as someone who had to live through that for 4 years. But yeah,
it's something I could definitely see them doing. They've done some dumb things the last couple of years when it comes to signing players or hiring coaches. It's been a rough spell for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but
fantasy football, yay! We as you discussed, we are going into our fantasy draft tomorrow, and we are in a 10-man keeper league, and so we all have our keepers. Again, we're not going to dive too deep into our particular league because that's our particular league, but again, just kind of looking at some of the players that are ultimately going to be available. To say Jamar Chase should be the very clear number 1 overall pick, I think is a pretty safe bet. Again, he has T. Higgins back, so it's not like he lost a guy that's going to, take some of the defense away from him. He's still with Joe Burrow. They still have that kind of... Zach Taylor still has that offense called the way that he wants it to be. Chase Brown's going to be another year better in that offense. Mm-hmm. Jamar Chase it's just a simple, easy pick, I think, at number 1.
He is. He's the clear number 1 for sure. What's bizarre this year, though, is really the top several picks you can find some pretty significant negative in all of them, which is concerning. Usually you go into it and you go, yeah, this hands down the top 3 picks, they're going to be the top 3. But like I look at Jamar Chase and I go, that Bengals offensive line is not good. And so I don't think the Bengals are going to win a lot of games this year. But as a result, they're going to be playing from behind a lot. So Jamar Chase could get a lot of action. But maybe not some games. I think it's going to be a very boomer bust season for Jamar Chase. He's going to put up like 25, 30 points one week and then like 7 to 10 another week. That's going to be the scary thing. And then you go to like Saquon Barkley, who I think is also a top 3.
Oh, he's
You know
4.
me. I very much am a believer in the Madden curse / the offensive player of the year curse, especially the Madden curse when it comes to running backs. I know it's missed other players. It doesn't miss that running back position, though. And so I'm really worried that we could see something happen there. And then you go to, the number 3, I think, for a lot of leagues, it's sort of up in question. That's where it starts to get a little more interesting. Do you go Justin Jefferson, who is a known proven commodity, but who has J.J. McCarthy as a quarterback? Is Kevin O'Connell going to be able to get J.J. McCarthy looking like Kirk Cousins?
Or Sam
Or
Darnold
is he
last year.
going to be, or Sam Darnold last year? Or is he going to end up looking more like Joshua Dobbs or something like that, where it's not quite as productive? And then you got a guy like, in my opinion, Malik Neighbors should really be considered as a top 5 fringe top 3 guy. Because yeah, the Giants aren't going to win a lot, but my God, that guy's going to put up a lot of fantasy points every week, whether he's catching it from Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston.
Yeah. So right now, and we use ESPN. That's our main source for fantasy football. These are the top 10 players in order from 1 to 10. Jamar Chase is ranked at number 1, which I think both of us fully agree with.
Yeah.
Bijan Robinson is number 2. Justin Jefferson is number 3. Saquon Barkley number 4. Jahmyr Gibbs 5. CeeDee Lamb 6. Christian McCaffrey at number 7. Puka Nacua at 8, Malik Neighbors, who we were just mentioning, at number 9, and then Amon-Ra St. Brown at 10. So, again, you mentioned that all of these guys potentially have things that are wrong with them. And again, I look at Jamar Chase. I'm not as worried about Jamar Chase in that Bengals offense as you are, particularly. Bijan Robinson, I don't trust that Falcons offense to do anything intelligent, especially when you have a defensive minded head coach. Now, Bijan's going to get a lot of rushing attempts and a lot of yards. He had over 300 rushing attempts last year. He actually did pretty well in the catching game as well last year as well. So he is kind of that dual threat guy.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Jefferson essentially just has that rookie quarterback out there in J.J. McCarthy, and so it's gonna be potentially a little bit rough watching that from time to time. Barkley, as we all know, offensive player and Madden curse, when those two things are particularly combined, it goes really, really bad. I'm not as worried about Saquon Barkley as maybe, for instance, yourself, but Jahmyr Gibbs, he lost his offensive coordinator. That's a big, big loss. CeeDee Lamb, well, he plays for the Cowboys, so that's an issue in and of itself. Christian McCaffrey, who knows if he's even going to touch the field, because we all know he's essentially made out of wet paper mache at the moment. Not even just normal paper mache.
Went out and made a trade for another running back. They brought
they did.
Brian Robinson Jr. in from the Commanders for a 6th round pick just yesterday or this morning. I can't remember.
Yeah, yesterday.
Yeah, and so I don't know, man. CMC, I think, is probably the riskiest pick of these top 10.
Yeah, Puka Nacua had a injury-plagued season last year, but is Matthew Stafford going to even survive the year? If Matthew Stafford is healthy for the entire year, Puka Nacua is going to be fine if he himself stays healthy. But there's a lot of question marks if both of those things can ultimately happen. Malik Neighbors, well, if he has Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, or Jackson Dart, it's the classic, fuck it, Malik is down there somewhere.
Yep.
Amon-Ra.
Nope, go ahead.
No, yeah, all I was gonna say is, and Amon-Ra, same issue that Jahmyr Gibbs has, is he does not have Ben Johnson.
Yeah. And I would argue that it's a bigger risk for St. Brown than it is for Gibbs because it's
Oh,
easier for a running
massively.
back to still find success under a new offense because here's the ball, run.
Yes.
Whereas as the wide receiver, it's you're not necessarily learning new routes, but you're learning different mechanics for what that coach wants and how he wants to run the offense. And so it's do they use Amon-Ra St. Brown the same way? Do they?
Well, and that's just it, is that
I don't know,
you
man.
you take Ben Johnson away from that. Sure, you can
Mhm.
still have the exact same offense out there, but it's now an offensive coordinator trying to put a new stamp on this offense and calling situational plays. Because
Yeah.
the biggest thing that people forget about Ben Johnson is he's such a creative mastermind, but he's also really good at setting things up and the situation for the plays that are being called. And how is this new OC going to ultimately utilize Amon-Ra St. Brown? That's
Right.
going to be the big question here.
But this really is one of the first years I've seen where every single one of the potential first round picks in a 10-man league, you're looking at going, it's a gamble.
Yeah.
Whether you're picking pick 1 or pick 10, you're gambling on the guy that you're getting because there's question marks around all of them. We don't have to worry about this, thankfully, because as we said, it's a keeper league, and I'm pretty sure all 10 of these guys have been kept by somebody.
Yeah, the first guy that is available on the every single list that's also available in our league happens to be the 11th player on this list, and that is rookie running back Ashton Genty. Now, this is probably, now looking at it, the safest pick that we've gotten to, and it's all the way at 11 because Ashton Genty, very, very talented running back,
Mhm.
goes to a team with a head coach that has been known to like to run the ball a little bit, with an offensive coordinator that also likes to run the ball. Now, I do have some concerns about that O line and the rest of that offense, but I also look at Genty and I go, he's going to find a way. Like, he's
Yes.
going to break tackles. Do I think he maybe will have the projected amount of numbers that he's projected to have? Because they're saying they're expecting about 275 carries, about 12,000 or 1,250 rushing yards, 8 TDs, and then around 63 catches for around 500 receiving yards. I don't think the receiving yards are going to be quite as high,
No.
and I don't know if I'm quite ready to say he's going to get that rushing number, but I think both are still relatively close to what he can do combining wise. But all in all, like, this is a young guy that's fresh legs essentially coming into the NFL, and no one has tape on how he's going to be utilized in that Raiders offense.
Yeah, and I'm a little more confident that he'll be able to surpass those rushing numbers at least because I look at this Raiders team and last year aside because they were lacking a lot of talent last year, but you go back 2 years ago, the O line still wasn't very good, and look at what Josh Jacobs was able to do there while
Yes.
he was there. And
Yes.
Ashton Genty is a significant upgrade over Josh Jacobs, and Josh Jacobs is no slouch. And so that says a lot. I do think we'll see Genty probably be able to surpass that 1,400-yard mark at the very least, and probably double digits in the touchdowns.
Yeah, he's going to be without a doubt an exciting player, but the fact that we're still talking about him being the safest pick so far,
Yeah.
and him being likely the first pick in the second round, and we have kind of already had, I have already kind of had some things spoiled to me from some of our other league mates. Again, we had 2 new guys join us that were essentially expansion. We also have a third guy that joined us that's just taking over another team. But yeah, the first 2 guys, they're like, yeah, the first guys basically said to me, he's like, I'm taking Ashton Genty with the first pick.
Yep.
It's like, very, very, very understandable there. Like, I get it. I do.
Well, 100%. I mean, you're taking an expansion team in a keeper league. Your first pick, you want to grab a guy that you're like, okay, that is going to be my keeper for at least the next 3 seasons.
Yeah.
my number one keeper. Because I mean, we also haven't decided if we're going to expand further with how many keepers we have. Like this is an evolving league that we play right now, so
Yeah,
it's going to be interesting to see how things shake out. We may end up at a point where it's a full keeper league.
it very, very well might be. And it just be a situation of just where we essentially just go with rookies for our draft, which
Yep.
would be insane to think about. But we'll see when it eventually comes
That's-
down that line. But yeah, next up is Devon Achane, running back. Then you have Nico Collins at 13, Brian Thomas Jr. at 14, AJ Brown 15, Drake London 16, Jonathan Taylor 17, Josh Jacobs 18, Derrick Henry 19, and Brock Bowers at 20. So again, a bunch of players that are all very, very good, and a lot of players on that list that are already kept for our keeper league.
Well, yeah, and I mean for myself, we've said I am concerned about those Lions players, but because I've got those Lions players, out of those top 20, I do have 4 of those as keepers, which is a nice thing to have for sure. And then my last couple were just sort of more gambles, if nothing else.
Yeah, out of the top 20, I have 2 keepers.
Yeah.
So I still feel pretty good about that. But yeah, we will continue to see as I continue to sneeze due to allergies. So I will let you talk here for some of the moments.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. And it's going to be interesting to see, you know, for our league especially, it's where did the quarterbacks go? Because we've also expanded to a double quarterback league. And so some guys kept quarterbacks, some guys did not. It's going to be interesting to see. Like on a base level of you're starting a new league, quarterbacks are going to be a bit more of a premium this year. I think we see more of them go a little bit earlier. You know, you got guys like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow that we've seen the last couple of years put up significant numbers and start to rival what the wide receivers and the running backs can do. And so that's why we joke every year about guys who take a quarterback in the first round. And it's starting to become a little more common with some of those guys where it's worth it to, you know, maybe skip over a guy like a Bijan Robinson or something like that where you're not sure if he's going to perform and grab someone like a Josh Allen where you know you're going to get 25 plus touchdowns, 3,500 passing yards, and an additional 800 rushing yards.
Yeah, and for us, since we do have that dual quarterback system where we have the 2 starting quarterbacks, if we were to do this where it was a draft of where we were completely starting over, our draft board would be nothing but quarterbacks for the first round because they place it's such a high value of going, well, you need not just one, but you need 2 of them that are starting per week. So like that's where that kind of comes in, and that ultimately is where you kind of have this situation of going, do I go with one of these starting quarterbacks right away because I don't want to miss out on some of these guys, or do I go with the normal register amount of players? And that's the thing that ultimately makes it just a little bit more challenging. And I think both you and myself, particularly like for our league, of going like, you have to have 2 quarterbacks. And so if you don't, it's going to be one of those questions of going like, okay, like what happens here? And I know I had a keeper on my team that is a quarterback. I ended up keeping Caleb Williams because I think it makes a lot of sense to have kept Caleb Williams from what I did last year. But yeah, there's going to be some interesting picks that ultimately come to fruition early on in this season for sure. And quarterbacks, in the last 2 years that we've been doing this, we've had Patrick Mahomes go first overall. I know TJ, you know, air quotes, said, oh, the draft auto-drafted Patrick Mahomes for me, and we still make fun of him to this day about this. And then you and myself last year gaslit Will, who does the baseball podcast with DJ, into taking Patrick Mahomes second overall because we both convinced him that when you were third overall, that you were going to take Patrick Mahomes, and it should be a really, really good idea that he doesn't. That was masterful by us.
That was a fun one to be able to do.
The funny thing about Will this year we didn't even gaslight him into making his first round pick. We already know who it's going to be. So we know 3 of the first round picks that are already going to happen.
Mhm.
And Will being at pick number 9, pick right in front of you, he's deciding to take Kyle Pitts.
Yep. Yeah, he is drinking the Kool-Aid for sure. Social media has brainwashed him into taking Kyle Pitts in the first round. And it's funny because you do see it every year. You
Oh,
know,
oh yeah.
Kyle Pitts, he's a letdown every year, and every year he still gets drafted in oftentimes the first round. You know, I've seen people that are like, I've got the first overall pick, and they're looking at Kyle Pitts, and I'm like, you are just insane.
Yeah, no,
I,
Will was even asking me, "Can I have the first overall pick just for the memes of me taking Kyle Pitts?" And I said, "No. If you want to be insane, you have to do it at pick 9."
Yeah, because I don't trust him at that point. When you told me he said that, I was like, he's not taking Kyle Pitts. He's trying to flip the script on you for once and get you to give him that pick so that he can go haha and take somebody better.
Yeah,
No, he would have
exactly.
taken Genty, I guarantee it.
100%. I just looked at him and went, "Listen here, fucker. You're not playing this game." Like
No,
we all
no.
know
If
the
he
game
wants
that
that
you're
first pick, he's gonna have to trade for it.
exactly. I've been trying to convince a few of our other league mates to send him a couple messages being like, "Hey, I'm going to take Kyle Pitts ahead of you." And just to get
Yeah.
him really panicked, and so he has to kind of make that move because he is changing his team name, something that involves with Pitt's name. I'm not going to reveal it. I want you to kind of be surprised by it because I think it's quite funny.
No, that's good because I know you and I had to talk about what he changed it to, and I was not super happy about it.
Yeah, because in one of the other leagues that you're in, he ultimately ended up somehow stealing your name.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I gotta talk about this. And again, we're in the talk of fantasy football. Fantasy football names. I think every single league you should have some really bizarre, messed up, funny names because it just makes the league that much better. Again, going back to last year, we had a couple of really creative ones, and then
Yep.
we had a couple of less creative ones. But yeah, some of the team names that we have in our league this year are quite good. For instance, my team name is Put Your Ditka in My Butt Kiss.
Yep.
Again, me being a Chicago Bears fan, Mike Ditka, the coach, and then Dick Butkus, obviously one of the greatest linebackers that has ever, and I will say it, probably the greatest linebacker that has ever played in this game. Your team was Cut My Balls and Go Deep. I know
Which
you are planning
will,
to change.
yeah, that was my team name last year, so I likely will be changing it for this year. I just haven't found one to settle on yet. I've got a front runner, but I just have not decided if that's what I'm gonna go with or not.
I know one of the names that we have told one of our league members, the one who has Chase Brown. I thought this was perfect, which is
Yep.
I Chase Brown kids. I
Yep.
think that is unbelievably funny because all you're doing is just adding 2 simple words and it makes it so much worse.
Oh, I know, right? There's
Uh,
some good names out there, man.
yep.
Like, there's so many good ones I see every year. There's a lot of creative people. I give props to people who can come up with team names so easily because I have such a hard time with it. I always have such a difficult time coming up with good, creative, funny team names.
Another one from Malik Neighbors. Neighbors think I'm selling dope. Which again, if you know the J. Cole song reference, it right there. But yeah, it's there's a lot of really fun creative names. I like some of the creative names that we have from some of our new guys as
Hmm.
well. I think both were fairly decent. But yeah, fantasy football always a very very fun time of the year, and if you play it, you know the pain and the joy of when you finally beat your league mate, or when you have, you know, Aiden O'Connell not be able to hit Devontae Adams for 2 passes in a single game and you lose by 0.4 points to
Yeah.
potentially go to the finals.
I mean, that's what happens when you have to rely on Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah.
That's why you don't put yourself in that goddamn position.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
right?
You
But yeah,
think
I
that
mean,
he would be able
as far
to,
as team names goes, like if you guys have any really good, funny team names you want to share with us, please put them in the comments because we love laughing at hilarious team names. So please fill our comments with your funny team name suggestions.
yeah, and with that, that is likely going to be us here for the end of this podcast. Again, next week, we are likely going to be talking a little bit more about pretty much just our teams. I know last week we gave our official record predictions for both of our teams, so go back and watch that video. But for
And
Sterling,
we will next week probably be doing our predictions for the season opener that first Thursday night as well. So that will be our first record prediction of the year. First game prediction will be next Saturday, likely.
yes, indeed. But for Sterling, I'm Brendan saying thank you all very much for watching. Peace.